Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, Christ is in our midst. Today, on this day of the Procession of the Cross, historically this feast is given at a time in which the empire would experience outbreaks of certain diseases and sickness. And so the Church, in her wisdom, being guided by the Holy Spirit, inaugurated this Procession of the Cross, this feast that the cross would go out. It would be brought throughout the whole empire. In that procession, prayers being offered, and then followed the blessing of the water to offer the healing, sanctification of the people against diseases and ultimately against sin. And this feast is an important feast even still for us because it reminds us of this connection between sins and the disease of the body, sins of the tongue, sins of the eyes, sins of the mind, and the way that those sins begin to cause disease in the body. And this connection is really important for us because the reality is that in the times that we live in our generation, we've all been raised with this idea and this thought that sin is something just of, an exclusively kind of moral character. But the reality is that sin affects even our bodies, and in fact, oftentimes if you begin to pay attention, sin will affect your body first and foremost. And so what are we to do? How are we to deal with sin? If sin isn't just simply, I did a bad thing, but sin is the brokenness and the disease in my body, yes, caused by moral problems, but nevertheless, where are we to find healing? We find healing in the cross. We find healing in the cross because we will often see that so many of the diseases that ail our body are diseases actually of sin. If we were to look at the various gastronomical diseases, right? Where are they acute? Where are they finding their source of pain? Through gluttony. If we think about various heart diseases and various diseases of the nervous system, where these come from? Stress. Where does the stress come from? It comes from putting an emphasis on worldly things and not having an emphasis on the things of God. Yes, monastics and elders do find themselves getting sick, but it's a rare thing, actually. It's a rare thing that they're sick with the same types of sicknesses that we are often afflicted in the world. Different types of sicknesses afflict them. And interestingly enough, when a sickness afflicts an elder, think of St. Paisios with his cancer, think of St. Porphyrios with his blindness and his many illnesses that he endured. Their illnesses actually become a means of their deepening of prayer. And this is the power and the mystery of the cross. And that when we begin to embrace the cross, we begin to say no to ourselves in our food. We begin to say no to ourselves in our vainglory and our vanity and feeling that we need to have everything secure and perfect. And thereby letting that go, we begin to lose the stress that so quickly weighs down our hearts, our nervous systems. We begin to find that we're living in a measure of peace. And that peace is the presence of God. And that presence of God then doesn't make our problems go away. But instead of turning to food or to stress or to anger or to judgment, to avarice, to all the various ways that we try to offload the stress, we begin to give those things to God. And then lo and behold, not only do we have peace in our hearts, but our organs, our blood, all these things begin to take on a different character. And so when we do experience discomfort, that discomfort then becomes a cross in which we bear and in which we begin to receive grace versus something that we lament, something we complain about, and therefore adding even more problem to the system. When we bear the cross, when we pick up our cross and put that forward, when we lead with the cross, when we lead with forgiveness, when we lead with patience, when we lead with discipline, saying no to ourselves, when we lead with humility, not only our minds, but our bodies become healed. And healing, my brothers, my sisters, to be clear, is not in the avoidance of pain, because you will have pain and you will have sickness in your body to the grave. What I'm talking about is you begin to feel grace. Grace no longer just becomes an idea or a moment in which God got you off the hook. That's actually not grace, not quite yet. You begin to actually feel it in your body. You begin to do things that you could not do before. You begin to serve, you begin to love, you begin to experience the things of God without complaint and without obligation and guilt, but with joy. That is a sure sign and evidence of grace in your life, and only comes when you put the cross forward in your life. So to the prayers of St. Porphyrios Paisios, and all the great ascetics, may we learn to bear these crosses, and in doing so receive the grace of God, not just in our hearts, but in our very bodies.